Welcome to another episode of Apostles, Elders of GMS. And this is a slideshow that we have put together depicting events that happened on Saturday, beginning with Elder Apostle Tahar and myself, and I'm here with Apostle Elder Ramlab, and we took a trip to the Metropolitan Museum, and we took some pictures from the artifacts located in that museum, and we have put together a slideshow for you brothers to go into some of the history behind those artifacts that we saw at the museum. And hopefully you brothers will be enlightened by this slideshow. And without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so the first slide is, as you can see, the Metropolitan Museum, and it's located in New York City. I believe around, what is it, 83rd
and 5th.
83rd and 5th. And it's a very, I think, if I do remember correctly, I think it was first erected in 1870 or 1872, if the research I did is correct. And pretty much it houses artifacts of different empires from all over the world. And it's very important that you brothers go to places like this, the museum, because there is some hidden truth in there. A lot of the artifacts in the museum is pretty much designed to promote so-called white supremacy, as we'll see in this slide presentation. But every now and then you'll see an artifact in there that will tell the truth. Yeah, the water. Exactly, tell the truth. So when we first came into the museum, the first artifact we saw, the first statue, if you will, as you're looking at it here, was this statue here. Now, I didn't get to take a picture of the plaque of this statue, but I believe it said lady. It was a lady of a noble family.
Yep.
And what is the first?
She was holding a scroll in her hand.
Right, right. What's the first thing you notice here on in this picture here?
Her nose is broken off.
Right. Now you heard Apostle Ramlab mention she was holding a scroll in her hand, which that scroll represent the scriptures, right? Or the truth.
like a position of nobility, which of course is scriptures and I guess papers stating or showing her nobility.
Okay. And we were from, I don't know if you remember what era.
This was in, I believe it was the 1400s, around the area of Constantinople, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken.
And beginning with Elder Tar, we were speculating that she might have been a Jake.
Yeah.
And our strongest reasoning was the fact that her nose was chipped off.
Yep.
As you can see here clearly. Also, we made mention about the benefactor's wall. And what it is when you go into the museum, as you go up the stairs, there's a wall with numerable, trying to get the word out, amount of names written on the wall. And these were names of individuals throughout the years that have donated mostly monies, to this museum. And when you check out those names, they're real prominent in the world of Esau,
Yep.
Names like I believe the Rockefeller.
Yeah, I believe there was in there. I'm not sure if the Carnegie name was in there, but a lot of those prominent names of those international banking families We're in there, and
I think Astor, the name Astor.
Yep, that appears in it. Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of the top 13 Illuminati families.
And then Bloomberg, I think former mayor Bloomberg, his name is on that list. And you know, we were speculating that the reason why, or one of the reasons why they donated so heavy to the cause of the museum was to push this lie and to push the idea of so-called white supremacy. You know, that the so-called white man is supreme to all the other races.
Yeah, that was his job when he came
exactly
back into power during the Renaissance.
That's right. And that's one of the reasons why this lady of a noble family, why her nose was chipped. Because one of the ways you can tell what kind of ancestry a person has is by certain features on their face. Like concerning the so-called Negro, they'll have big lips or a big nose, wide nose, flared nose, if you will. And that's one of the reasons why her nose was chipped, you know. So go to the next slide here. Now, we came into a section. Now, in the museum, there's different sections in the museum. It's sectioned off. Like you have your Egypt section. You got your the Byzantine section, which you're looking at here. Assyrian section, which we have this. We have a few slides in this presentation from the Assyrian section. Now, in this Byzantine section of the museum, there was a series of plates. I believe, well, according to Wikipedia, it was 9 plates, and they're known as the David plates because they're supposed to be plates that depict a moment or moments in the life of King David. Now, these plates were all on silver, or the depictions were all on silver. And I'll just read this here from Wikipedia. It says, the David plates are a collection of 9 corresponding silver pieces stamped between 613 and 630, created in Constantinople, which Constantinople today is known as what? Turkey, correct? Each depicting excuse me, Istanbul, Turkey. Each depicting a scene from the life of the Hebrew King David. These luxury pieces are considered an important part of Byzantine art. Hence the reason why they were located in the section of the museum called the Byzantine Room. Important part of Byzantine art produced after the rule of Justinian and before the first Byzantine iconoclasm.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to remark on that.
You know, the word iconoclasm means the defacing of the images. The word icon is Greek for image, and klasm is Greek for defacing. So this was the first Byzantine iconoclasm, or this was the first show in that process of the destruction of the images that were in the Byzantine Empire prior to Esau coming into power. You know, so it was just in other words, when you look at the plate, you can see that those people are people of color. You know, they have the woolly hair, they have the features of Israel, Jake features, and this was just before they started the destruction of the actual true images of Israel that were depicted on all those different pictures and statues and frescoes and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like the center, I believe this is supposed to be Samuel the prophet, or because this is supposed to be David, I believe.
Right. Yep.
And I mean they I mean, you could go either way with them. They're not, the images are not straight up, to me at least, they're not straight up so-called Negroid. Case in point, these two individuals right here. As you can see, right at the end, they have sort of a Renaissance look to them, you know. But according to the information found on Wikipedia, the plates were found well, it says the plates here were discovered in 1902, but they came out of in Cyprus, northern Cyprus, but they came out of an era around 613 to 630. Now we know around that time we were ruling as as a people, and around that time it's pretty much the so-called white man. They were in slavery, around that time underneath us, what we call the Dark Ages. So again, the David plates is supposed to depict King David. Go to the next slide. The same. This is another
coronation of King David.
Right.
Anointing.
David being anointed. Now in this picture, especially this individual here, he clearly has a look of a so-called Negro.
Right.
All right. This individual here, even this individual, they don't look like, the images don't look, in this plate at least, they don't look like, straight up, so-called white people. They have this woolly hair, Negroid look to them. I don't know if you want to comment on this.
Yeah, well, basically, like I said, this is pre iconoclasm. This is just before Esau came up in there and started destroying the images that were there, the real images of the people that really ruled Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
Go to the next slide. There you go. Oh, look at this. Look at this individual here.
Mm-hmm.
And this individual here.
Okay.
This individual. I guess the first plate, especially the two on the end, they had like a Edomitish look to them.
Yep.
But come on, brothers. You're looking at the plate now. In this plate, you can clearly see these were jakes.
Yep.
And where's this found? In the museum, the Metropolitan Museum in New York City.
Yep. And them devils know that the people that were portrayed during the Byzantine Empire were so-called Negroes, because they have other slides of us that's you're gonna see of actual pictures that were actual documents, of knights, that were riding on the horses and in those different chariot races or whatever they had back then.
Tournaments, yeah.
Tournaments, and they depict, Moorish traits.
Moorish heads.
Moorish heads,
which
were Israelites.
Yeah, which we're gonna cross to that. The brother's moving a little ahead. But it's all good as long as it's all in edification. There's the next plate, or the next slide, I should say. Oh, look at that, brother! Come on,
Yep.
Come on. And you know what? In the post production, I'll see if I can get a closer zoom on these images. But there's no doubt, okay? There's no doubt, man. This is supposed to be King David in battle. Silver. Like I said, it's a collection of plates. As you can see, the other plates back here, numbering about 9 of them. The museum call them the David plates. All right, so there you go. All right, the next. Now, this is what Elder Apostle Ramla was talking about. The tournament. What you're looking at here is an aerial shot of the tournament room, which is another section of the museum. And this is the section where we saw this actual book, which is on display. It's called the Tournament Album Book. And this shot here, this picture here I took on my phone of the Moorish heads riding on horses, taking part in jousting or in medieval tournaments. Okay? And as you can see, just like Elder Ramlab mentioned, you can see that they have the Moorish heads. Now, I wasn't able to, I was trying to position my phone to take the full picture, but I wasn't able to. So this head is cut off here, but you can clearly see, and I put an arrow here to show you, of a Moorish head on the on the horse. I don't know if you want to.
Well, that book is still on display there. That was an actual book back from that time period.
That's right.
Where they actually drew, because back then they didn't take pictures, they didn't have cameras, so they actually drew, the coats of arms and the horses and knights and all that, and the coats of arms. Those are actual coats of arms. You know, they drew what they saw on the coats of arms.
Yeah, and that book, that tournament album book, is on display, like you said, in these cases here.
Yep. You can't reach in there.
You can't reach in there. You can't turn the page or anything like that. Hell, they don't, certain artifacts in the museum, they don't want you to even breathe on them.
Yep.
So much as touch them. They usually have the guards standing right there.
Yep.
And the guards are looking at you, especially if Jake go up in there. You know, yeah, exactly. Usually if the crackers go up in there, they'll have no problem with the crackers up in there. But if Jake were to go up in there, they get the hard looks from the guards, and they get those side looks, you know.
They follow you around.
Yeah, they follow you around because in their minds, Jake ain't supposed to be there.
Yep.
And why is that? Because somehow Jake might stumble upon the truth. But there you go. That tournament book, you see those glass casings there. That tournament, one of those glass casings contains this tournament book here. And on display is the Moorish heads. Now the Moorish heads were what? They were Israelites. They were Israelites that call themselves Moors. And what I did was I took a picture. If you Google a Moorish head, this is the image. You'll see this image here. Okay? This image right here. And also, you'll see another image. This is supposed to be the flag of Sardinia, which is located in Italy. Now, I believe you had some information you found.
Yeah, there was, I believe it was the Emperor Claudius, if I'm not mistaken. He conscripted 4,000 Jewish soldiers to the island of Sardinia. You know, and that was just the ones that were forcibly put there. You know, there were others that went there voluntarily, but those are the ones that were forcibly sent there. So you know that when they went there, they was having sex, you know, with the women of that island. You know, so pretty much, you know, that island of Sardinia, a good vast majority of them are Israelites, just like Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so pretty much, you know, there's a vast history, and these soldiers, a lot of times, in certain aspects, the soldiers that were sent out from the Roman Empire weren't acknowledged as being Jews because they had Latin and Greek names. You know, so that's why most people don't know the extent of the Jews in Caesar's military.
Like the Jew that helped what's his name, Titus.
Titus, yep.
Take down Jerusalem.
Yep.
Which was
Tiberius Alexander.
There you go.
You know, because Titus, even though he was a general, he was just a general in name.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't experienced in warfare, and to take down all the warfare that was going on in Jerusalem. So Tiberius Alexander, which was a Jew, so-called Negro, he was the one that was chosen by Vespasian to go up into Jerusalem and to actually put down the rebellion of Israel in that area, because he was experienced. He was a very experienced general in war, so he knew exactly what to do.
But who got all the credit?
The honky, Titus.
Exactly. Yeah, but there you go, brothers. You know, as you can see, the flag of Sardinia. What they got on there? Jakes.
Yep.
How you get a white man out of that? How you get a Edomite out of that?
Yeah, but pretty much like the scriptures say in the book of Job 13:4, it says, "But ye are forgers of lies. Ye are all physicians of no value."
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much that was the gift that was given to this devil. He's pretty much a low-life, lying, conniving devil.
But every now and then that the truth comes out.
Yep.
And that's where we come in, brothers. That's our job, to bring out the truth. Like it says in the book of John 8:32, "And ye shall know the truth,
Yep.
and the truth shall set you free." All right? So you got to stop looking at yourself, we're just niggas. Hey, this is history right in your face.
Yep.
All right? Okay, let's go to the next slide. Renaissance art. Hey, you cracking up back there. Renaissance art. Now, this was in the Renaissance section of the museum. Now, the word Renaissance literally means rebirth.
Yep.
Re means back, and naissance means birth.
Yep.
And the birth of what?
So-called white men or the Edomites coming back up into power.
That's it.
Which what the first thing they did was destroy all the images of Jake that were all throughout Europe and put themselves up as the people that ruled that region.
Oh, and that reminds me of the book of Job 9 and 24, which says, well, I'll let you read it. Job 9 and 24, as we look at the image here. Basically, according to the so-called white man, Adam looked like this when he was created. And I have a scripture after we read Job 9 and 24. I have a scripture posted here, Genesis 2 and 7, which destroys this image here. Okay, but I'll allow you to read though.
Job 9 and 24. The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof.
This is an example of covering the face of the judges by putting up his face. All right, and the main judge is the one the world calls Jesus Christ, which his name is Yahweh Shai. They've covered his face with Caesar Borgia. But was not Adam one of those judges?
Yep.
Yeah, so there you go. He covered up the face. Go ahead.
If not, where and who is he?
Yeah, so he's the devil, man. And this is the work or works that show that he's the devil.
Yep.
In other words, Renaissance art is an example of the works of the devil.
That was the beginning of the deception of the whole world.
That's right. Now, the scripture is Genesis 2 and 7, which says, "And the Lord power formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." Now, the important point there to mention is the dust of the ground. Now, the dust of the ground, the deep, dark soil of the ground, which is where the richest life comes from, is what? Just that, deep, dark, deep, dark brown. So how do you get a character like this out of there? You don't. That's right. All right, and I made note that the benefactor's wall, this is one of the reasons why you had so many names, which majority of those names were Edomites that donated, that were benefactors to that museum to keep pushing that lie. Right. After all, we're in the year of the push. Hey, those crackers, they were pushing, man. When they came into power in the Renaissance era, they were pushing. But anyway, the benefactors, like I was saying, the benefactors, that was their job. Or the reason why they gave to the reason why they gave such large monies to the museum was to help keep the lie going. Keep the lie of what? White supremacy. And you're seeing an example of white supremacy here with Adam. With this character being labeled Adam.
Yeah, they're not going to give you the true image of Adam. When it's Esau that's putting the money up together for these different artifacts.
Exactly, and like you see down here, forgers of lies. Here's an example. Forgery. Lies. Let's go to the next slide here. Yep, another example. And we're making jokes when we took this picture at the museum. I believe Elder Apostle Tahar said, "This is supposed to be an angel?" Yeah. Well, this is the image right here. Another example of so-called white supremacy. Yeah. And then the female angel at that. Yeah. I don't think I've ever read in the scriptures, and matter of fact, I know I've never read in the scriptures about female angels. Okay, which is blasphemy.
I got a quick precept.
Yep, go ahead.
This is Revelation chapter 20, verse 7. "And when 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out."
Yeah, his prison was slavery, like we mentioned. During the Dark Ages, there were slaves underneath us, underneath the Israelites. That was his prison. Go ahead.
"And shall go out to deceive the nations."
Yeah, this is a example of their deception.
Yep.
And that's why the majority of people on the planet Earth really believe Adam was a white man. And the angels are white. Go ahead.
"And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sands of the sea."
Yeah, and that's going into future prophecy of Russia. Gog represents Russia. Future prophecy of Russia coming back together as a force to be reckoned with, a force that's going to come against America and Israel and destroy them. But there you go, brothers.
Yeah, when they came out of that servant state, the first thing they did was lie to the world by destroying all the images of the real Israelites that were ruling throughout Europe and putting them up as white people.
There you go.
You know, and that's why when you see a lot of those images from the past, a lot of them, the noses are broken off, and if they're paintings, you'll notice that the hair is real thick, real big, but then they painted it over like it was doggy stringy, but it's real heavy on top if you look at it. But then the Renaissance pictures, the hair is flat on the head and doggy stringy. But the Renaissance, with the Byzantine pictures that they
painted over,
the hair is real thick, but they try to paint it like as if it was stringy.
Like it looks matted. You're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at them pictures, you could see it. You know, prior to the 1400s.
Like this is straight up Renaissance art.
Yep.
Straight up.
Why didn't they break the nose off of that?
Right. Yeah. Because it's straight up Renaissance art. I have the scripture down there, Ezekiel 1:7. It says, which is speaking about the angels. When Ezekiel the prophet saw the angels came to him. It says, and their feet were straight feet, and the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot, and they sparkled. This is talking about the angels, and they sparkled like the color of burnished brass, which is burnt brass. So how do you get burnt brass out of this image here?
Right.
Burnt brass would be very, very dark.
Yep. That's a honky.
Yeah, exactly. So we can move on. Nothing but a honky. Now, in the next slide, there's more Renaissance art. Again, the famous mother and child. That's another thing that the Renaissance of Esau was known to push. Push. That image of the mother and child.
And look at the baby, he got that pointy nose.
Yeah, this is there's no. Why isn't the nose broken off on this image? Because this is pure Renaissance art. This is pure. What's that?
That came later.
Yeah, that came later. This is pure white supremacy, man. To push the idea that Mary was a so-called white woman, and the baby Jesus was a so-called white baby. Now, this is in the Renaissance section of the museum, Renaissance art. And you know, most jakes don't even ask what does the name Renaissance mean.
Right.
You know, if you ask that question, then you'd begin to walk on the journey of the truth, getting to know who you are. And on this side here, the left side is supposed to be Saint James the Greater. Okay, because you had among the apostles you had James the Great and James the Less. Right. So this is supposed to be James the Greater. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, well, if you look at his face, you can see that his nose is totally destroyed, totally gone. There's nothing there.
I wish I could have got a better picture, but there was two images, if I recall.
Yep,
there was one
right next to it.
Yep, but that one was a straight up Renaissance.
Yep.
Yeah, straight up honky.
Yep.
Straight up honky. But this one was supposed to be, or supposed to represent Jake. Like I said,
they both said James the Greater on it. This one, if you really look at it, you can see it. I mean, you can see it from here. You can see the nose is completely broken off.
Oh yeah, you can see that.
I mean, the facial features are all pretty much destroyed.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing that resembles Jake is the beard. You know, but then when you look at the other image, which they have in there, which I mean, I'm pretty sure if you type in on images on Google, James the Great at the Metropolitan Museum in New York, you might get the other picture.
Yeah, it should come up. Definitely.
And you can see the difference.
Yep, night and day, brothers. Night and day. That's why you got to go to places like the museum.
Yep.
Now the next slide is supposed to be Moses, or a depiction of Moses. As you can see, man, clearly a so-called black man. Yep. You can't get around that. I mean, look at the facial features. Again, you'll notice the nose is chopped off.
Completely.
All right, hacked off. You can see the negroid features.
Got the braids.
Got the
eyes.
Yep.
The cheekbones.
That's right. The beard, the woolly beard.
Yep.
And down here,
The law.
yeah, he's got the law in his hands, which represents, that's how, Moses was known as the lawgiver of the nation of Israel. And I think on the plaque, what caught my eye was the Latin phrase lex animata. And if you want,
It's pretty much lex is law, animata is life, or alive or soul, which is given.
mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much it, the lawgiver.
The lawgiver.
Because the law is what brings life.
Exactly. That's right. And this picture was taken, on my phone, and you can see it's clearly shows a so-called black man, Moses.
Yep.
Next slide. All right, now we cross over into the Assyrian section, and this picture was taken from the wall in the museum of the Assyrian section. They had this large map. I don't know if you remember. Right. And we were all looking at, beginning of Elder Apostle, we were all looking at the map and getting into it. Pretty much it depicts locations of different empires that ruled during the Assyrian and then Assyrian Babylon, or Assyrian Babylon, or Babylonian Empire.
Yep. It gives you different ancient locations.
Mm-hmm.
Which what really is approximate locations. Because they really can't say for sure exactly, where to pinpoint the exact place. But this is a good depiction because this area, which the so-called scholars call the
Fertile Crescent.
That's
right.
where civilization started regrowing back again after the flood.
I think that's one of the reasons why they had that giant map there, besides it being part of the Assyrian Empire. But like Apostle Ramlab said, it's a very important area.
Yeah.
Okay, a lot of history.
Yep.
Now, what I did was I put some arrows of certain cities that play a important part in the history of Israel. Like as you see, Ur.
Mm-hmm.
It was from Ur of the Chaldees, where Abraham came from.
Right. Yep.
And then I put arrow for Babylon.
Yep.
The Babylonian Empire. We were in captivity in the Babylonian Empire for 66, almost 67 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then Nineveh. What should come to mind when you hear Nineveh? Jonah should come to mind.
Jonah, which is the Assyrian Empire.
Which is the Assyrian Empire, and also Tobit.
Tobit, yep.
Which Tobit, Jonah had prophesied that Nineveh would go down, but if they repented, and they did repent, so Nineveh wasn't destroyed at that time. But later, during the time of, later on,
destroyed.
Nineveh was destroyed.
Yep.
Okay, so
the Lord said it was going to be destroyed, so He destroyed it eventually.
Mm-hmm. So these were points of interest concerning this map. Cities of interest pursuant to Bible prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, a lot of great prophecies came out during the time of the Assyrian Empire. You had great prophets like, I believe, Haggai. I believe,
Nehemiah, I think was in there.
Ezekiel, definitely. Yep. Isaiah.
Jeremiah.
Yeah, because you had great kings that were terrible kings during the Assyrian Empire. Sargon and Shalmaneser and Tiglath-Pileser and Ashurbanipal and individuals such as those. And those were cruel kings that wreaked havoc in Israel back in those days.
Right.
And some of those prophecies of what those kings was going to do to Israel is still is recorded today in the book of Isaiah, like you mentioned, Ezekiel.
Yep.
So moving on to the next slide. Now, this is of particular interest because this is the same Assyrian section, but there's in one of those plaques, if you will, that was on display, they had something called wedge writing. All right, which is also known as cuneiform, which cuneiform, when you look it up, means wedge writing. This is where a certain tool was used to chisel in words, which essentially meant something.
Right.
All right, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, that was actually before the, according to the history, actually before things are written down on paper or papyrus or papyrus, however you want to call it. They used to write it in stone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Lord wrote the commandments on stone. But you also had scrolls, because in Israel you had something called the House of Scrolls, which is where you kept all the writings, beginning with the law and the different writings, or whether it was genealogies or history or whatever. So they used to be kept in scrolls. So they actually wrote it down on paper. But before that, it was etched in the walls. During the Egyptian Empire, it was pictorial, which was pictures that conveyed the language at the time. This particular time, there were the Assyrians and different empires that had cuneiform writing, but it was pretty much all the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as I was looking at this picture, it's supposed to represent a Syrian king, and what is he doing? He's pretty much worshiping the sun, sun worship.
That was the main thing they worshiped.
Yeah, you can see the rays emanating from this image here, and on top it looks to be an eye with some illuminating rays coming out of it. But we know that the Assyrians, and not just the Assyrians, all the other nations outside the nation of Israel, they worshiped their gods were gods of idols, like the sun and the moon, constellation, and that's the book of Psalms, the 96th chapter, the 5th verse. It says, "For the gods of all the nations are what? Are idols," and the Assyrians were no exception. All right, so more from the Assyrian section. This is also known as the griffin. And I have the scripture here, Daniel, the 7th chapter, where it says this, the 4th verse. "The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings." All right, so here's the example. A lion, the body of a lion, with the wings of what? An eagle. Okay, which is like Apostle Ramab said, is a griffin. And this is supposed to represent the first king of the Assyrian Empire. This was the main symbol of the Assyrian Empire. All right, the lion with the eagle's wings. And just like it's recorded in the scripture, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Because at first you had this image, which represent the Assyrian Babylonian Empire, then dovetail or meshed into what? The straight up Babylonian Empire.
Yep. Yeah, because that was the beginning of the beast that Daniel saw. From the Assyrian Empire all the way to America, those are all the empires that Daniel saw, even though he didn't understand it at the time. And that was pretty much the rule that the Lord has set up from that point until now. The ending of that vision was America. That was the last empire, or the last beast, or the last part of the fourth beast.
So that's why that image was on display at the museum. Yep. Because it's a part of Bible history. It's part of biblical history. So, like I said, when we went to the museum, you had these different sections, and some of those sections, they actually told the truth. Like when you mentioned about the tournament room, as you see here. That's just an example. But there you have it. And that's the end. That's the end of the slideshow. So again, this is Apostles of GMS, or Apostles Elders of GMS, at the Metropolitan Museum, New York City. And I hope you enjoyed the slideshow presentation. And we'll see you in the next episode of the Apostles and Elders of GMS. Shalom.